tell, Bobby, eh?
Tell us what's happening. Give us a crack.
I'm going to talk on planning in general, just to sort of set the sort of national park scene, and then talk about local housing. Planners are guardians of the environment, and as a guardian we've got three roles in protecting, nurturing and advising. Protecting the
more you see of people and experts, the more you start to worry about the world. They've got the degrees and such like and all this sort of thing, but when you think about it, when the good Lord made people, he gave a lot of people brains and he gave a lot of other people common sense, but he seldom gave them both. Now we've seen what they've done to the towns. Nature cannot be planned like that. It has to evolve as nature. It isn't a thing that can be planned by a person in an office. Nature is an ongoing thing, and if they come and make as big a hash in this part of the world as they have done in the towns, well, the country's finished.
So that's the sort of triangle of plans that influence how decisions are taken in planning in the national park. Now, central government...
I farm at Hartsop in the Lake District. I've 1,700 acres. We have poor land, we have bad weather, we have a lot of rain. Prices are getting worse every time we go to the mart. And on top of that, we have planners and bureaucrats sitting over us, telling us exactly what we can and cannot do.
So it then said, well, you're charged with the duty to protect it. That's your first consideration.
My mother's and father's grandfather and great-grandfather all live within 5 miles of Hartsop. I've been very happy in Hartsop. It's a nice, quiet little village, although just at the moment things is getting harder to make a living in farming, and whether I actually be able to afford to live and work in this part of the world. Like, scenery is marvellous, but it doesn't feed sheep. Our main fell is called High Street. It has an old Roman road along the top of it. I think that's why it got its name. When you get up on there, among the rocks and the screes, you need one of these, what I would call a fell dog. I've always been keen on dogs. In fact, the whole family have been, both for pleasure and work. Dogs are the lifeblood of a farm, really. They do all the work. Without them, we would be completely lost. Come on, all lads. Nowadays, there's that few people employed in farming around here. The neighbours join up together on these fells. My brother helps me, and a neighbour, my nephew. They all turn out and give us a hand, and then I'll go back and help them to gather their fells. Every November time, we mate the tubs with the ewes. The rams come October, get awfully frisky. They know the ewes are beckoning them over the wall. And when you see this old ram here, when you look at that expression, you can see that he's thinking, tonight's the night. I don't just keep dogs for working. I keep some dogs for racing, which is one of the great passions in my life. Hound trailing is a lakeland sport. It's basically a race over these fells for hounds and pups. They follow an aniseed trail, which is basically like fox hunting without the fox. In fact, half these dogs, if a fox got up in front of them, wouldn't know what it was. Today we're starting pups off. They're learning to hunt the trail. For a start, you set off a trail just more or less going out of sight, but I like to put one or two bits of zigzags on just to make sure that it isn't just guessing and it is using its nose. And if you can crack that, you've got cracked trailing. I'm very pleased with Mick today. He's done all that's been asked of him. Sometimes, first time can be a disaster. They just stand and look at you and don't even attempt to come. But he's done remarkably well today, remarkably. Hearts of Magic is the best dog I ever had. It won 154 trails. It beats me why it can't really speak to me. It's a class above any dog I've ever known before or since. It is a real pal, and yet it has the ability to run a trail that much quicker than any other dog that's, well, I'm biased, but I think before or since. Unfortunately, I had a dispute with the Hound Trailing Authority. They said that Magic took a shortcut at a trail, which I disputed. The outcome was they disqualified it, gave it a yellow card, and said it had to run marked. I wouldn't insult that dog by putting a mark on it, so I called it a day. I retired her and gave up trailing myself. I still get great pleasure in training pups. For my niece Helen and her boyfriend Paul, there's a lot of enjoyment in it and no hassle from authorities. I won't breed off Magic or its mother again unless they clear its name. It's just a pity because it's the end of that line. It's a matter of principle. About the only dog I'm not really keen on is the tourist dog. It's not the dog's fault, it's the owner's fault. They come for a day out and expect it can run anywhere it wants. My brother was best. A visitor asked him if he could let the dog off a lead, and he says, well, he'd prefer it not to. He says, because he didn't mind dog off lead, but he says after he'd shot it, he couldn't do it, all this emotional scene of wives and children crying and such like, and dead dog, and he's never shot a dog in his life of any description like that. But it worked. I don't say that visitors should be banned altogether, but in fact, I like to see them really, but I don't think they should have an overriding interest over the local people. It's a national park. That was the biggest mistake anybody ever made. It isn't either national or park. They think because it's national, it's theirs, and because it's a park, they can do exactly what they want. There was nothing wrong with calling it the Lake District, as it always was called. And then people realised that this is private land owned by private individuals. They just haven't got the same rights that they think they have.
what, to my idea, is going wrong with the Lake District. We're getting far too many people coming into the country that aren't country people. And they're not really taking an interest or an active interest in what goes on in the district. And I think there is a real need for young people to be encouraged, you know, to stay in the country when they do get married, instead of having to move into Carlisle or Penrith, which is what's happening.
Robert's my nephew. He lives in the village. He was born here. Today is a very sad day for Hartsop, because with Robert leaving school, there isn't a school child left in the top of this valley at all. When I was going to school, there was into the teens going either to Patterdale or Penrith. Times are changing. We have even to raise money to save the local school through jumble sales and even quizzes. Dad's been trying to find out what questions are then. I think the worst thing that could happen to this dale is for either the public hall or the local school to go down. Once that's happened, I think the dale's finished. And I will do anything that is humanly possible to say that both those two things are maintained. Tonight isn't mastermind, it's all a bit of fun, but you can see how the local people are all of a similar sort of mind to me, that they're determined that we will try and save these two things at any cost. Plus, there isn't a kid in that school that doesn't love it. The winners are Igo. It's funny, really, how bureaucrats want to muck us about by mucking around with the schools. On the other hand, they want to keep us back in the past. To give you an example of officialdom and the planning authority, there was a chap here one day when my boss wanted to put electric fence around the fell, and he was horrified at the idea. He said that we would let the walls all tumble, and then instead of rebuilding them, we would just put 2 or 3 more wires across. I said to him, I'll tell you what it is, I wish you'd been here 300 years ago. And he looked at me and said, why? I said, well, just imagine me coming and wanting to put an ugly black-grey straight mark right up that fell side and call it a wall. I said, there's no way you'd have given us permission. And he went quiet and burst out laughing. He says, you know, you're right. Now, the be-all and end-all now is walls in the Lake District. But just imagine if there hadn't been a wall there and we'd come to the Special Planning Board and said, look, we want a new thing called a wall. As it is, I want a new thing called a fence, and you still won't listen to me.
No answer to that.
They're wanting to keep us as if we're in a museum, really. And this is what makes it harder and harder to try and make a living. We're supposed to stop like in the 18th century, while they're in their offices with computers and such like. When they come to me, want to get some goose feathers to make a quill and some soot to make the ink, then I'll farm like we did 200 years ago. Sheep that's predominant on our farm is Swaledales. Well, we're going down to collect these sheep today because we want to sell them at market. And the law states that to go to market, they have to be dipped. Ready! Ready! 2 or 3 years ago, a good Swaledale ewe was making 70, 80, 90 pounds, but the last year or two, the price has dropped. You could have got any amount of decent ewes for 30 to 40 pounds last year. 80, 90, 100, 10, 20, 30.
130, 130, at 130, 130, left to me now at 130, 130, 130, and he goes this time, all done, 40, 140, 150, yeah. Are you finished? 160, 160, 170, 170, 170.
The marketplace is the culmination of all your hard work, really. It's part and parcel of a farming community's life, where everybody gets together to have a good day out or a good grouse, really. It depends really on how the trade goes on the day. It's getting towards winter now. There's no more chance of making any more pennies. Days are getting shorter. The winter months are about on us. There's a much better side to winter, really. It's when we get our pubs back again, when the local people start to go in and can get a seat. During summer, the pubs are filled with tourists, and crag rats, as we call them. They're sitting there with their half pints all night in their best seats from 7 o'clock. So, winter time, we get to enjoy ourselves a bit more. We have our local darts nights, domino nights.
Next on this board, Lynn and Alan Weir.
But it's not all beer and dart in winter. In the old days, work was very hard. But now we have ways of making it rather easier. For the last sort of 7 or 8 years, we've used a helicopter to carry these blocks out onto these fells. There's basically a compound feed, really. Various things, barley and treacle, and made into a block that the sheep can go and eat in the winter. And they've done a lot of good. The sheep are a lot better come lambing time than they ever used to be in the olden days. I used to enjoy it, bar when it was really blowing a gale and it was tossing us about a bit. It was like a cork on a river. But you've earphones on and the pilot can talk to you, plus he talks to the ground. And to tell the ground to keep an eye on us because he might have to put it down because it was blowing that hard up there. Well, I didn't mind at all till I heard him telling them that he was worried. If I hadn't heard that, I would still have been all right. But once he started to panic, I think I did as well. The weather around here can be very funny. You can set off one morning, a beautiful day, set off to walk around these fells, and by the time you've got to the top of the fell, there can be a raging blizzard. When the snows come, we always go up to the fells and bring them in to the lower ground where we can feed them a lot better. You usually find with sheep that they've an idea when the snow's coming. If you go up through the village in winter and suddenly a lot of sheep appear down about the sheep pens here, it doesn't matter what Mr. McCaskill or Mr. Fisher said, if the sheep come in, you can guarantee there'll be snow next morning. But there's not always snow in winter. it is an easier time, and we get a bit of time to train the pups to get them ready for the hound trailing season in the spring. We're off to Borrell today. I have a friend over there that said he would put us a trail on. Now, this is the first time we've ever had our dogs away from home. This is the first time that they're ever in competition with any other dog. It isn't really a competition. The most important thing is to get them round the trail. But you still like to see your dog beat your neighbours, just to think that your training's going rather better than his. Although you're at a disadvantage when you're on his home ground.
I'm all right. They're doing well considering first time, huh?
They're doing well.
Is that your dog, second Alan?
It looks a bit like it. At the end of a trail, everybody's there, all keyed up, thinking this is the day that their dog's going to do well. And then everybody starts to shout, and usually if there's only one dog appears on the whistle, half of the people start to shout. They all get that fired up that that one dog's theirs. Even their dogs are black and he's white and coming down the line. They've still got to have a bit shout. But I was saying myself, I'm not going to say I was any different to anybody else. Well, I've fallen out with hound trailing. I haven't fallen out with my local association, which is a Keswick area. They are the salt of the earth, and I still enjoy going to their local dinner dance. At these dues, it's all hound, hound, hound. What went wrong through the season or what went right through the season. This is what keeps hound trailing going. Well, yeah, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me here tonight for this. No, it is a shock having to hand everything out, but I've been studying mirror and I've sort of wondering whether I would have any grey hair or it would all go off first. But now I know I'm old when you get to dishing prizes out.
Senior hounds, that's the old dogs. Mrs. Oldcorn and Marsden's true lass.
Oh, the poetry of riding, grasp me around at sports, wrestling and hound trailing, loved by all the Cumbrian sorts. The hardy sheep are grazing in a stone-wall tapestry, work and leisure hand in hand, a treat for the world to see.
I've never married. It's a bit much to ask any girl, really, to go into as a farmer's wife nowadays, a farm worker's wife especially. And as you look around you and see all these marriages breaking up, you think, well, me dogs are better to say and much easier to deal with than a wife ever would be. Lambing time is by far the busiest time of the year. It's set off about 4 in the morning and you can be finishing up till midnight on a bad day. 2 or 3 years ago we had a real bad start to lambing and I could chiefly have done away with myself after about 4 days into lambing. You didn't know which way to turn. Basically you keep going round your sheep seeing that there's nothing taking any hurt. You keep an eye on the sheep that's having difficulty. There's no need to catch the ones that are lambing on their own. The biggest percentage of them do it quite naturally without me bothering them, doing anything to help them at all.
I'll bet you on this flying machine. Catch pigeons, they tell me this can.
Today is my niece Helen's big day. It's her first day on her own. She's gonna race her two pups, Mick, who will run under his racing name Magic Magician, and Meg, who will run as Magic Megastar. It's their first official trail, and we'll soon see how they perform.
Yes, my lass. Megastar. Could it win it?
Meg's done really well. She's won it. Never mind that bit of a mix-up at the end. That often happens on the first trail. That's pretty good for the first outing. Makes all that training during winter worthwhile. One regret I have is not having a family to keep the valley going. But you can't have everything, and at least Helen's keeping hound trailing going in the family. And I am pleased she's kept the name Magic going. You sat up on them fells on a beautiful sunny day with your sheep around you and your dogs, your family really. When you look about you and you think that your ancestors helped create this, you can't help but be rather pleased about it, really. Maybe rather proud. What bothers us now is that we haven't as much say over our destiny as we had. We get planners from all arts and parts who's never lived here in their lives, usually, and their ancestors definitely didn't. And they come and tell us what we have to do on our land with our money, and they make a better living than we do out of it.
Now, we'd certainly listen. Now, if we don't come out with the same answer, it doesn't mean we haven't listened. We've come to a different conclusion. But believe me, there's an awful lot of consultation. There's an awful lot of consultation takes place in the Lake District, which you may not find elsewhere.
Next week we meet the old man of Coniston, Alan Mason, a dyed-in-the-wool countryman, as well as an ex-special constable and lifelong poacher who demonstrates the art of tickling a trout and bagging a pheasant. That's next month.
Bobby, eh?
Tell us what's happened. Give us a crack.
Oh, hello, it's Dr. Cox from Caldbeck. A patient known to you was going to Wigton for intermittent care. His date of birth, 28th of December, 1905. He had a stroke in 1984. He's had vertebro-basilar insufficiency since 1988. He's in congestive cardiac failure. He's also got gout and suffers from recurrent urinary infections. Apart from that, he's grand. Caldbeck practice really shouldn't be here. Any administrator worth his salt would have drawn a red line through the practice years ago. It's here for historical reasons. My father came here in 1949 when there were a small number of patients, and it's expanded over the years. The practice is entirely rural, down into the northern Lake District and up to the Solway Firth, east to the M6 motorway, and west into the borders of West Cumbria, about 20 miles in each direction. The sorts of problems we see in a rural practice are very different to those that one would find in a town. For example, in towns there's much more severe deprivation, neglect and isolation. I'm sure people in towns are much more isolated than they are in the country. Oh, Bobby! In an area like this, there are probably more people who are as self-sufficient as possible. There was one chap a few years ago who I saw. Oh, Bobby! His previous consultation, which I think had been the first time he'd ever seen a doctor, was when he'd seen my father 24 hours after he'd cut half his foot off. 2 parts of his foot were still in the boot that he hadn't taken off to look. He'd thought about it for 24 hours before bothering the doctor. And the time I saw him was the day before he died. I think people like that are salt of the earth because it's that independent, self-sufficient attitude that I admire in people. Take care, man. Here's Robert here, Bobby.
I'm training him anyway.
Haven't you?
Is he knocking about? Is he doing? Robin, they put a lot what you... They moved up.
Is he?
Aye.
Has he finished with the sheep sales now?
Eh?
Has he finished with the sheep sales? Hey there, Robert.
Yeah, I don't think.
Hey there, Robert. Is he out there?
I didn't show those eyes.
Uh-huh. Maybe have a word with him.
Aye, that's it.
Yeah. How are you managing, Bobby?
Middling. Oh, man. Oh.
He's so unhappy, Robert, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. He's totally lonely.
That's the worst of it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. He thinks I should do everything, you know, and work miracles for him, like. But,
which you do, of course. I mean, there's no way you could manage here if it hadn't been for your support.
Oh, no.
It's hard, isn't it? It's very hard. Very hard.
Yeah, man.
It's a struggle, Bobby, isn't it?
Yeah, bad eye.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Do you sleep at night?
Yeah.
Do you sleep at night?
No. No.
What keeps you awake?
I can't get the thing. Every knock, he has never knocked in. I've knocked out every back and inside and out again. And, it's bad coming in the man. I've been hellish for a week, man. It's serious.
Let's see what I can do to help, Bobby, eh? I'd never intended to be a doctor. When we were small, I saw my father working all hours of the day and night. We never actually saw very much of him because he was working so hard. And I knew that if there was anything I didn't want to do, I certainly didn't want to be a doctor. On no account a GP, and never a GP in Caldbeck. I'll see you again.
Yeah, man.
Cheerio, Bobby.
Yeah, man.
I'd never expected to come back to Caldbeck to live and work. What happened was that my father's partner decided to retire, and therefore there was a vacancy in the practice. And I knew that if we didn't fill that vacancy, somebody else would, and that the practice would never be the same. There would never be the sort of continuity that there would be if I was to follow my father. It was really an emotional decision to come back to a place where I'd been born, been to school, been brought up, felt very close to. And in a way, emotionally, I didn't have any choice. And it was right. It was absolutely right.
Hi. Morning. In good fettle.
Thank you. What's on today?
Oh, I don't know.
When we were children, wherever we went, people said what a marvellous fellow father was and what a kind, caring doctor he was. And we knew that he was much admired and loved in the community. For the first 3 years, my father and I worked together. And I enjoyed that enormously and learned a great deal from him. And we were very happy working together. It cemented our friendship. We trusted each other. We were able to discuss people who, in a way, we'd both known for 30 years, so that there was continuity from the patient's point of view.
Aye, you look fit.
Well, so do you.
I think I look fitter than I feel, you know.
Well, not
Really?
It's the newness wearing off.
That's right.
Yes,
Right.
out of guarantee, you know.
Never thought about that.
I suppose as children we recognised that the doctor did hold a position in the village. In those days it was very different. The headmaster of the village school was held in similar respect, and the rector and so on. Nowadays it's much more egalitarian. For example, we were expected at home to speak with what you might call BBC accents, speak proper. Whereas at school that was totally unacceptable. You couldn't possibly be part of the peer group with one's friends with a posh accent. So we spoke Cumbrian dialect at school, and in a way we were bilingual.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I think we should stay on the bigger dose of water pills.
Yes.
Annie, would you mind?
Aye.
Have they made life difficult for you?
I have a bit. Every quarter of an hour.
Yeah, but it's best to get rid of that fluid.
Aye.
But what it does mean, having spoken the Cumbrian dialect at school, I have no problem at all understanding it now. Whereas my partners who've come from other places do find the very broad dialect difficult to understand. But keep on the double dose of...
Not just a course, I have to give up them, eh?
I think so, Annie. Do you mind?
No.
Just for 10 years.
Is that all?
Not forever.
Oh, that won't be so bad. You'll remember run out of pills with that. Aye.
The important thing, Ernie, is to try not to run out of your pills.
Aye.
You're a bad devil, you know.
No.
Last year, I had a phone call one evening when I was on call, and the person on the end of the phone said, "John's down." And I knew what that meant, because in the local farming terminology, when a cow is down, that means it's not on its feet and it's ill. So I knew there must be something pretty seriously amiss. So I said I would come round straight away. When I got there, the lady was sitting at the foot of the stairs weeping, and so I thought, oh dear, this means that John's dead, which was quite possible. I went upstairs, fully expecting to find him dead, and there he was, laid out flat on his back. And then suddenly an eye opened, and he looked at me and he said, "Bye as piss, Jim."
You know, the old eye's been bothering me lately.
Has it? Has it been running again?
Oh, aye, terribly. You want to see it out or something?
It's, yeah, go on. I'll take a little swab, I'll whip it out, Ernie, and then... Rex Harrison only had one eye, I saw in the paper the other day. I didn't know that.
Who?
Rex Harrison, the actor.
Oh,
Never heard of him?
Never heard of him.
There was a quiz on and they said, what was it? What's of Sammy Davis Jr.,
Aye.
Rex Harrison and somebody else all got in common? And the answer was Ernie Blaylock, that was the other fellow. Do you want the mirror?
Aye.
I've known Ernie since I was a child. In those days, the surgery used to be part of the house. Now we've got these new premises, which are well-staffed and much better equipped, so that we're better able to do minor operations and to deal with casualties and all sorts of things. That's all.
No, not really.
Take a swab.
Coming out now.
There's some coming. Not exactly gushes of the stuff. It feels like clot, actually, doesn't it? Right. But disappointing, really, isn't it? As regards lifting and things, cesarean wounds heal very well. You won't do any harm as long as you don't try and start the car or... but, you know, lifting the babies and things will be all right.
Oh, yes,
My father used to say that there are those people who go to the doctor and those people who don't. That's very true. And very interesting. Why does one person who has a cold carry on working? Another person takes himself to bed with some aspirins and a box of Kleenex. Somebody else goes to the chemist and gets a common cold remedy. And the fourth person will come to the doctors and want a sick note. That aspect of human behaviour is very interesting. Sometimes those people who do come to the doctor for every episode of illness can be a bit discouraging to the doctor. And sometimes you worry that one day they're going to be really ill and the doctor's going to miss the real illness, just expecting that it's another minor problem that would get better anyway. That's a personal anxiety.
Yes, I will for me. It impresses the police inspector if you've got a parcel, doesn't it? And you're parking on yellow lines. Very good. Thanks very much, Dick. Bye-bye. Can you stand some more treatment?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're quite big and well-rooted.
Yeah.
That's going, actually. Oh, rest.
Yeah.
Right. I think if you did it to me, I'd have all sorts of unrepeatable words. People don't whinge. Well, some people whinge. Oh, right. People consult the doctor for different reasons. And I guess it's helpful to try and work out why people do come to the doctor. Is it because they're worried and they want reassurance? Or is it because they want treatment that they can only get from a doctor? Okay. Is it because their employer says they've got to see a doctor? Is it because there's perhaps litigation going to follow an accident and they don't need the injury treated, but they need it to be recorded in case there's to be a legal battle later on? There are all sorts of reasons why people consult doctors.
How are you? Hey. Mum?
Yeah, she's
right?
at work. She's at work.
Yeah.
I wondered if I needed any more of those for a start, Jim. Do I?
Let me check your blood pressure.
Because I'm having dreadful problems at the moment.
What sort of problem?
Well, I don't know whether it's...
Commonly people bring their children to the doctor when actually it's themselves that they're worried about. In medical education, this is known as the token symptom. I've got a sore throat, doctor, is a way of coming through the door. And then it's an opportunity actually to talk about what's really worrying the person, that they've lost weight or that they've worried they've got AIDS or their marriage is on the rocks or whatever. And people don't always actually reach the point of discussing what they're really worried about. One of the biggest put-downs to a doctor, or I guess to anybody who's trying to help, is when they're leaving, they say, well, thanks anyway, doctor, because you know then that you failed to find out why they really came.
Yes, I will, yes. Thank you very much.
There are 3 doctors working out of the Caldbeck surgery. We're partners and we share the work as evenly as we can between the 3 of us. And so we're all here through the day, Monday to Friday, and the on-call commitment we share out so that there's always one of us on call in the evening and at night and over the weekend.
I mean, prevention display or therapy.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Caldbeck 254. Yes. I sleep very well, and if my sleep's disturbed, I know I get grumpy. I know that when I get out of bed in the middle of the night, sometimes I'm irritable and I regret it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be along right away. Bye.
I've driven miles and seen people and driven home and gone back to bed without properly surfacing. If I wake up properly, because people in an area like this are very responsible and they don't abuse the service that we offer by and large, a call in the middle of the night is usually actually one of the most worthwhile and rewarding visits because one can actually do something useful. I think the worst thing is getting out of bed.
Can you ask him what to order? Can't see.
You can.
You can see.
You can see. Yes.
Okay.
See.
Do you think he got something in it?
Well, I think it would be wood dust from work, Dr. Jim. He's had this problem before, but tonight it's been the worst it's ever been.
Yeah. He's a bit of an expert at this, isn't he? He's had it done so many times. I'm just going to get a special light and then... Just to see if they... Oh, there it is. See this, Jean? You see that bit on the there that's this glowing yellow?
Yeah.
That's where he scratched the cornea. He'll have had a bit of sawdust or something in it and then rubbed it.
Oh.
It'll heal all right.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give him some ointment that'll heal it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel, George? You've got a bad cough, haven't you?
Yes.
Have you got a pain somewhere? Is it sore somewhere?
No.
Bad cough?
Yes.
Being on call is probably more stressful for spouses and families than it is for the doctor.
How are you?
If I'm on call from, say, Friday morning through the weekend till Monday evening, that's a long spell, but it's broken up by actually going out and seeing people in their homes. Whereas my wife, Fiona, is actually tied to the house. She's got to be there to answer the telephone. She's stuck.
Jonathan. Hannah. Philip.
One of the things that happened when we first came back to Caldbeck was a period of being tested out. And the very first day I was here, it came in April, which is lambing time. I went to a farm where there was an old chap who I visited and a lamb 5 days old in the kitchen in a cardboard box. What do you think's wrong with this then, doctor? They stood it up and it was very tremulous on its legs and quickly fell down. And there was clearly something wrong with it. So I said, if a baby gets twitchy on the 5th day, it's usually because of lack of calcium. Here came a bottle of calcium, obviously ready. So we injected it with some calcium. And when I went back a couple of weeks later, I asked how the lamb had got on. And of course it had died. And it turned out that the lamb was actually suffering from swayback, which is a copper deficiency in the ewe, which I didn't recognise and in any case is incurable. So they'd got nothing to lose. But I think I passed the test. At least I had a go. Coming back to the village that I was born in to work as a doctor meant looking after not only people I'd been brought up with, but their mothers and grandmothers, discussing the sorts of things that one would never normally discuss with one's neighbours, doing things to people that one would certainly never do to one's neighbours if one wasn't a doctor.
If you could slip your dress off, Kath, if you wouldn't mind.
In many ways, that was a strength because we trusted each other. I know people and they know me.
There's nobody peeping. That's it. Where is it? Just in there? There's no tenderness when I press. Where's
There
that?
is this side rather.
Cumbrians don't put people on pedestals, no matter who you are. You have to earn respect. But on the other hand, the friendship and trust that develops over a long period of time is a very good basis for a relationship between a patient and his doctor.
It'll mend.
Good lad, on you go. Nearly at Mr. Holmes now.
Many of my patients now I've known for 40 years, or getting on that way, which is normally what a GP normally only experiences at the end of his career. Are you sleeping at nights, Marjorie?
Much better.
Good.
Much better.
Good. And you've had no seizures since?
No,
nothing at all?
Not a trace, no.
How are you managing to get about? Have you still got your horse and trap?
Yes, but it's just a bit too far and a bit too busy and steep to bring a Shetland pony to Caldbeck for shopping or to see you. But at least it means I can be independent and get out a little bit with them.
Well, all being well, after the end of 2 years, as long as you've had no seizures, then you'll get your licence back.
Yes.
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
And the weather might be worse, mightn't it?
I think it might take up.
OK, Corny, off we're going. Good lad.
Where we go?
That's it. Good boy. Go on. Over here. Good boy.
Heskett, Newmarket and Caldbeck are two villages quite separate in many ways, and yet very close and very interdependent. There's a good-natured, bantering jealousy that goes on between the two.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the highlight of the day. So we have the Grand Parade.
The people who run Hesketh Newmarket Show come from both Hesketh and Caldbeck and the surrounding area, so it's not as parochial as it might sound. I'm actually listed as the show doctor, and now and again somebody falls off a horse or is kicked by a bull or whatever, but really it's a great social event, an opportunity to meet people and to talk, have some good laughs.
Oh, it is. It is.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
You're embarrassing me now.
There's a bit of a cock-up at the moment. We've got the terriers still in the ring. Steady go! Yes. That's it. Oh, these people to our lower. Oh, that's it. Yes, tiptoe, go.
Presidente. El Presidente. Normally, we'll go as a family. This year, I'm president of the show, whatever that means. It's a great honour. I just hope it doesn't involve any skill. Certainly, I have no knowledge about agriculture.
No?
Yeah, right.
Right, we're off. Don't forget the back.
I'll tell you what, if you buy a farm, I'll buy a motorbike.
You think I could handle it, John, eh?
Yes,
I thought after that I'd be unemployable. I'd like to spend more time in the community and with my family, but every day when I meet people who are much worse off than we are, it puts everything in perspective.
Hello, Robin.
Some people spend their whole lives caring for their loved ones. I respect them enormously. I'm not sure that I could do it. Hey. You're playing for the cameras, aren't you?
Yeah.
Robin's just back from the Peter Institute in Hungary, and I can see a lot of improvement. The whole family's shown an enormous amount of guts and determination to help him.
Those legs have got longer, anyway.
Oh, getting too big.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's Paddy. That's Tom, and that's Alan.
I know.
Okay, they've all come to see you. That's the camera, and that thing listens to what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
So you speak some Hungarian.
How do we say thank you?
What progress with mobility?
We've been mainly doing sitting exercises. His conductor over there is wanting him to sit at the table and eat by himself. Head forward.
Good.
Yes, head forward. Goodbye. Head forward, hands down.
Can you stay like that, Robin? Stay very still for a moment.
The hands flat. Now, push up, sit up straight. Goodbye, sit up straight. Yes, sit up straight.
What are you going to tell me? What was the best thing about being in Hungary?
What was the best? The what? The river.
Really? Did you go to the river?
Yeah.
What did you do at the river? Fish? You're a star, Robin Wilson. You're a star, aren't you? It's nice to see you back, anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is James Fox and the lovely Vera!
General practice isn't just about preventing and treating disease or giving out medicines. A doctor has to wear quite a lot of different hats.
Now he was a sawmill proprietor, and she a fair maid yet unkissed.
In the course of my work, I sometimes have to be a priest, marriage counsellor, or even a social worker.
Nay, 35th.
And a letter to the Director of Housing, Civic Centre, Carlisle. Dear Sir, a gentleman from your department visited Mrs. Parker today and requested that I write to you. Stop. I think that I have already written to you in the past. Stop. She suffers from arthritis.
Just been gone.
She lives with her son, Robin, in unsuitable housing, which I understand that you are soon to condemn.
Have you heard any more about getting a new house?
But she said nay, nay.
We haven't heard anything at the moment.
It would, of course, be highly desirable if they could be rehoused as soon as possible. Stop, new paragraph.
Then in comes the old undertaker with tape.
Now this hat is hard to wear. It's not that death's hard to deal with, it's bereavement. Society and doctors are getting much better at helping people who are dying and helping their families to cope. But what we're not good at is helping people who are bereaved. And there's nothing more painful than bereavement. Nothing. I think when you're visiting people in their own homes, it's much closer and much more personal, particularly when you've known people for many years. I feel very much their suffering and sadness when old friends die. The other side of that is it's much more rewarding to look after people you know well and care about personally.
Well, I feel sort of sickly and dizzy.
Are you feeling any different to last time I was here?
I might be a bit better than I was then.
Yeah. And you'll be better still, Mary.
I hope.
Yeah, you will.
I hope, else I was going to want a wooden suit.
Well, not yet. You never know, do you? But there's no sign that you're dying yet. People are becoming more realistic about death again. It's not as much a taboo now as it was 20 years ago when I was a medical student. Okay, Mary.
Bye-bye,
Take care.
Doctor.
Yeah, bye-bye. When we were students, when somebody was dying, they were really rather shunted off into a side ward of the hospital, and people went by not really knowing how to cope with it. It must be awfully isolating if you're dying and you know you're dying, and people aren't fools. By and large, people know when they're coming towards the end of their life. You can tell when you've lost weight and you're in pain and you're not having active treatment anymore. If your family won't talk about it, to be isolated at that time in your life when you really most need the love and support and communication with your family must be awful. The farming community has a very realistic approach to life and death. They're breeding animals, they see birth and death all year round, and they see it as a natural phenomenon, not as a surprise or as a taboo or as anything out of the ordinary. So it's not difficult to discuss death with most farmers and farmers' families. Some of the most moving occasions for me have been learning from much more mature and worldly people than me, my patients, how to cope with life and death. I remember standing with a farmer watching his wife being carried into the back of the ambulance and knowing that she was in a very precarious situation, and he obviously knew that whether she survived or not was very chancy. And he turned around to me and said, "Well, doctor, it's the same as farming, isn't it? You size up a situation and you can do your best, and then you've just got to wait and see what happens." And I thought that was wonderful.